Hello everyone. We have Mr. Rijit Biswas here. He's the founder of Crack Admissions, and today he's going to talk about how to ace different kinds of MBA interviews. As we all know, every business school is different and their way of interviewing students is also different. So you should aim on preparing about everything so that you can have your best chances. Do you have something to say before we start?
Yeah, so only thing I'll say that interviews is just when you're selected for an interview, every one out of three people who are selected for an interview finally make it to the final cut. So it's a very critical component. So two people also do not make it. So you don't want to land up in those two. You rather want to be in that one who makes it after the interview stage. So interview is all about showcasing yourself in terms of verbal communication, explaining to the admission committee in an articulate manner, because all of these things would be used in the MBA program, and that's why admission committees want to evaluate through the interview that, hey, you are academically you are great, you write well, but do you speak well also or not? So that's what they want to evaluate from the interview.
What kind of interviews can one expect as a part of an MBA admission process?
So typically in any interview process, these interviews can be one-on-one, like where you are talking with one person on the other side, like a one-on-one interview. These interviews can be one-to-many, where you are there and there are the panel of people who you're talking with. And these interviews can also be places where you are evaluated in a group, like a group discussion, right? So these are different types of interviews you can have. And again, when you are having a one-on-one or a panel discussion with a panel, the interviewers can be someone who's an admission committee member. The interviewer can be someone who's a current student. The interviewer can be someone who is an alum. And the panel can be a combination of all three of them, right? So that's what an interviews are. So you can face different kind of people in different kind of interviews. There can be a group discussion only. There can be a combination of group discussion as well as a personal interview. And there's also a possibility where you have presentation before you start the interview, or an extempore before you start the interview.
How many rounds of interview can they expect?
How many rounds of interviews? Typically, like if it's a personal interview, just a personal interview, you will have just one round of interview. If it's a personal interview plus something else, so there you can have a case submission or an extempore to be done before your personal interview, or a group discussion before your personal interview. So yeah, typically in most cases you'll have one interview or one stage of interview. In some cases you will have two stages of interviews. But it's not that it's a filter, it's a cumulative. Yeah, even if there are multiple stages of interviews, it's a cumulative of both the stages, and not like you are filtered out from one stage to another stage. There is no elimination between different stages of interview. Yes. After the combined interview, like if there are two rounds of interviews, one extempore, the second, or one extempore or a GD, and the second a personal interview. At the end of both these rounds, you will be either selected or rejected.
So who can be a part of the interview panel?
Okay, so this is something which I referred to previously also. Your interview panel can comprise of, if it's a one-on-one interview, it can be either an admission committee member. It can be, and that admission committee member can be just the person can be a professor. Like for example, in certain Indian business schools, like the IIMs, you will have professors as part of your panel, right? Or it can be a current student.
So is there a way we can figure out who is our panelist before we give the interview or before we sit for the interview?
Yeah, so there are some cases where you can, and this is not any investigative stuff. It is not an investigation which you do to figure out who's your panelist. The college itself sends you a link, and where you register for interview, especially if these are remote virtual interviews, the college sends you the calendar invite of a certain person, or so the interviewer himself or herself sends an email to you saying that, hey, can you block my calendar? In other cases, whenever it's an in-person interview, you don't get to know who's your panelist. You don't get to know. So don't even try doing this investigative journalism to figure out who's your panelist. Just be there, present your best self, irrespective of whoever the interviewer or the group of interviewers are. And hope for the best. But in some cases, you will get to know. So you can do some research about that person on LinkedIn and figure out what he or she is doing right now and what is his or her career journey look like. But then again, don't overdo it. Don't try to bias yourself before the interview just because you know who's the person and or rather you believe you know that person.
So does it help, or is there a difference in knowing your interviewer or not knowing them?
See, the cases where you can't figure out who's your interviewer, it's a blind interview. You get to know only once you enter the room. So you can't do anything about it, right? But if you know who's an interviewer, then you should make the most out of it. What do I mean by making the most out of it is doing some sort of research on that person, LinkedIn research, and figuring out what is the persona of that individual. Is he or she a current student? Is he or she an alum? Is he or she an AdCom member? Is he or she a professor? Right? So figure based on that persona, you just try to do some research about that person just to know what is his or her career, does his or her career look like, what are their interests, and so that during the conversation you know where are they coming from. But don't bias yourself too much just because you have some knowledge.
Are Indian business schools interviews different than that of global school interviews?
Yes and no, both. The process of having a personal interview is consistent across both Indian schools as well as business schools. The framework, their interviews are an important component of your admission process. That's also common across both Indian schools as well as international schools. However, there are places in Indian schools there are things in Indian schools which are different from that of global schools. For example, if you look at recently, I helped someone with her interview for Wharton. So there in Wharton, that's very interesting. They have something very interesting, which is called that you need to do a group discussion with a complete pool of of strangers who are also applying with you and figure out a new course which should be inculcated in the Wharton curriculum. Right? In Indian schools, you probably don't have that. You just have a personal interview where the interviewer talks to you about what you're doing, what you've done, what you've mentioned about your essays. There's no background of a group sort of event. However, in schools like and Ahmedabad, before COVID, they used to have a group discussion and they used to give a topic to the group of people, and then the moderator used to see how, or like somebody evaluator used to see how the person spoke about in a group setting. Was he flustered? Was he a passive person? Was he a very active person? Was he was he a leader or was he a follower? So there are things which they also figured out in this group discussion, but it's not there because of COVID, because of no in-person meetings are not happening. That's why it's not there anymore. So to a large extent, the interviews are similar. There are but finer details of the process which are unique to different schools.
Tell us more about Wharton's interview, like specifically the team-based discussions that you were talking about.
Sure. So Wharton has a very unique interview process. In that interview process, the applicants, whoever is shortlisted for an interview, they are asked to prepare on a certain topic, and they are asked to pre-prepare on that certain topic. And the topic is you have to figure out a course that is part of the ARC courses, or Wharton has something called ARC courses. ARC courses are alternate reality courses. So it has nothing to do with AR, nothing to do with VR. These are just courses which are not part of the MBA curriculum per se, but these are additional courses which students can pick up or take up. Right? So they already have 5 ARC courses. So they tell every student that, guys, why don't you come with your own course structure, a course, whichever course you want to inculcate in the program, and come up with your own course structure. And then there are 5 or 6 people in a group, each of them comes with their own course structures, own course, and together as a group, you have to come to a consensus and get to one course, which then they have to present as a group to the evaluator saying that, hey guys, this is what we believe a course should be added to Wharton. So that's the process.
So this is an exercise that takes place in Wharton like every time.
This is, for the last few years, it's also something which they have innovated and added new to the process. It's not that, but since its inception, it has been happening every time. So yes, at times it happens physically, at times because of COVID it was happening remotely. Yeah. But again, the uniqueness here is that each person, if you look at it, the first person does not know who are the other 5 persons. right? Who are the other
Yeah.
five or four or five persons with him or her in the panel, right? So that she or she is there's no way to figure that out, right? And every person will come up with his or her own course. Now, if I am pitching for course A, you might be pitching very well pitching for course B. So, and somebody else in the video will be pitching for course 3 and likewise, right? So how do you understand, how do you figure out as a group one single course and then present it? Right? So that's very
Yeah.
unique. And at that point of time, every person, my suggestion to every person is play different roles during this process. You can be a leader at times, you can be a follower at times, you can be a moderator at times. You can even take up the role where you remind everyone that there are only 5 minutes remaining and you guys have not, like as a group, they have not come to a conclusion on that course. Right? And at times, if you feel that your course is something which complements somebody else's course, go forward and state that. Saying that, hey guys, what you're saying makes sense, and what I'm saying makes sense also, in my opinion. And I see how these two courses are complementing each other. Right? So take like, don't go with a very rigid mindset. It's not a binary answer. It's not that your course will be selected or rejected. Your entire group and how you work in a group setting, group dynamics, is what the college is evaluating you on, not necessarily just the content.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a very unique assessment, and I believe that more schools should pick up this assessment style, just because like when you enter a business school program, that you have to work in groups. There are case study groups. There are groups for practically everything. You do not do anything except your written examination. You do not do anything as an individual, and that's true across your life also. I mean, nobody stays just as an individual unless you are like Vishwanath Anand, who's playing a sports, which is an individual sports, or you're playing individual sports. If you're working in a corporate setting, you'll have to work in teams. You'll have to work with people who are strangers to you initially. So at that time, how do you make sure that you align yourself with the entire group dynamics? Do not let your emotions, your ego, or your inhibitions spoil that group dynamics. Always look at the overall bigger cause. So yeah, I think this assessment style is beautiful, and other schools also should adopt it. I'm sure they will sooner than later.
Would you like to elaborate on anything that you think you must have missed out?
So I think, yeah, first thing first, do not take it easy. The interview, do not take it easy, but at the same point of time, do not to learn by heart a lot of things. Don't feel that you will have to just go there and like shoot bullets. You just have to take note of the situation, understand what the other person is doing. In most cases, these interviews are not stress interviews. These interviews are conversations, discussions, where the interviewer also wants to make you at your comfortable best and then ask you to tell stuff. Because if you're not your comfortable best, you are not giving your best, right? So you are not giving 100%,
Yeah.
or like your quality is not your 100%. So the interviewer in most of the cases tries to make you at your comfortable best, so that you can give your maximum output. By the same point of time, don't take it easy. Don't feel that, yeah, hey, since I've been interviewed, I can, and I have been, let's say, I work with a lot of people who feel that, hey guys, because I'm a consultant, I have been working with clients, multiple clients and team members. I think cracking an interview is very easy for me. Vis-a-vis some people who feel that, say, I'm a software developer, I've been only working with, I've been only coding, talking with only coders. I don't think I'll be very successful in interview. Both these people are right in their own perspectives, but yes, the software developer has to work a little bit more to prepare for the interview. At the same point of time, the consultant should not be overconfident. He should still prepare. He should still know his stuff, and never get into any debates or confrontations with the interviewer. It's very, very important. If you know you're wrong, just step back. It's okay to say, hey, I was wrong. Let's pick up something else. Do not get into a confrontation, because confrontation, nobody will give into a confrontation. It only shows that you are a sore loser. Right? So don't get into confrontation. That's my advice. Rather get into discussions. State your point. If you feel the other person is saying something which you don't believe in, state it with your experiences. Include your own personal experiences a lot in the interviews. Right? Always try to give examples. For example, say, hey, for example, whereas I was working in this project, I can relate to that. right? So when you say that, hey, I went to, like, why do I want to come to Wharton? You can always say that, hey, I know somebody at Wharton who's a good friend of mine or an acquaintance from work. I know that he's told me some very good stuff about Wharton, that you can do this. I can relate to that person because this is a person I know very well. I can relate to him. And since he got success at Wharton, I also think I'll get success at Wharton. So again, you are not being generic, you're rather personalizing your responses, which is also very important. Yes,
So
that's
I
about
think,
it. Nothing else. I
yeah.
wish everyone very all the best for their interviews whenever you guys get into that stage. And do reach out to us if you need any help with preparing for these interviews. We do mock interviews with candidates, and be happy to help you in your endeavor to get into your dream school as well.
So anyone who wishes to get their profile evaluated to see where they stand, please do send your profile to us. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Vijit. It was a pleasure.
Same here, guys. Bye bye. Have a good weekend and cheers and all the best again. Look forward to seeing you guys very soon.